Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jai Sripad Paramahansa Pradikacharya Ashtotar to Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pradikacharya Ashtotar to Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Whoops. Kvantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Who knows how to close these curtains? My friend Jamal isn't here. Narayana Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriyet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 8th day of May, 2019, in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 4 entitled, The Creation of the Fourth Order, chapter 12, Dhruva Maharaj goes back to Godhead. Text number 24. Tasya kila jagandhatu avang devasya shanginaha parshadav iyasam praptao netum tvam bhagavatpadam tasya kila jagandhatu avang devasya shanginaha parshadavya samprapto nitum tvam bhagavatpadam tasya khila jagadhatu avang devasya shanginaha parshadavya samprapto nitum tvam bhagavatpadam tasya khila jagadhatu avang devasya shanginaha parshadavya sampraptao nitum tvam bhagavatpadam tasya khila jagadhatu avang devasya shanginaha parshadavya sampraptu nitum tvam bhagavatpadam tasya khila jagadhatu avam devasya shanginaha parshadavya samprapto nitum tvam bhagavatpadam. Damodar, you're next. Tasya kila jagadhatu avam devasya shanginaha parshadavya sampraptao nitum tvam bhagavatpadam tasya kila jagadhatu avam devasya shanginaha parshadavya sampraptao nitum tvam bhagavatpadam. Bhakti Glenn. Tasya kila jagadhatu avang devasya shanginaha parshadavya sampraptao nitum tvam bhagavatpadam. Bhakti Nace. Tasya kila jagadhatu avam devasya shanginaha parshadavya sampraptao nitum tvam bhagavatpadam. Tasya, his, akila, entire, jagat, universe, dhatuhu, creator, avam, we, devasya, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, shanginaha, who has the bow named Shanga, parshadao, associates, iha, now, sampraptao, approached, netum, to take, tvam, you, bhagavatpadam, to the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Translation. Nanda and Sunanda speak. We are representatives of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the creator of the whole universe, who carries in his hand the bow named Shanga. We have been specifically deputed to take you to the spiritual world. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that simply by knowing his transcendental pastimes, whether within this material world or in the spiritual world, anyone who understands factually who he is, how he appears, and how he acts can be immediately fit for transfer to the spiritual world. This principle stated in the Bhagavad Gita operated in the case of King Dhruva. Throughout his life, he tried to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by austerity and penances. Now, the mature result was that Dhruva Maharaj became fit to be carried to the spiritual world, accompanied by the confidential associates of the Lord. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, just imagine getting that news. These two effulgent figures come and say, we've come to take you back to the spiritual world. How enlivening that would be. So, Srila Prabhupada, now, for extra credit, who can say the verse Prabhupada is referring to at the beginning of this purport? Go ahead. Yes, this is one of Srila Prabhupada's most often quoted verses. There's a nice file that's been compiled by Giridhari Swami called, what is it called? Prabhupada Shloka Uttama, or Uttama Shloka, something like that. And it consists, using the database, you can see the frequency of where anything comes. And so he's compiled these 180 verses. And what he gives is just the first couple of words. And they're in the order of the most quoted. That Srila Prabhupada quoted in his lectures and purports and conversations and everything. So this is, believe it or not, this is number 3 out of all those 180. Number 1 is Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Number 2 is Sarva Dharma Parityajya, which is 1866, which Krishna says, just give up all dharmas and just surrender unto me. I'll take care of you. You'll have no sin-free actions. It's very kind of the culmination of his whole instructions. And this is number 3, so it's very important. So, Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Yoveti Tattvataha. If someone, he's saying to Arjuna, if someone understands my birth and my activities in truth, Tattvataha, then you won't take birth again. When leaving this body, he'll come to me. That's the gist of the verse. And so Srila Prabhupada is explaining that this is what Dhruva did throughout his life. He made an effort throughout his life. Of course, he had that period when he was very young, at 5 years old, when he performed severe austerities, following the orders of his spiritual master, Narada Muni, and at the same time chanting the holy name, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and meditating on the Lord within the heart, and performing rudimentary deity worship. And all of those together purified him completely to the point where he got the darshan of Vishnu, and he was completely free from any material desire. He had this very strong desire to get this fabulous kingdom, and he said, I don't care about that anymore. That's like broken glass compared to this great jewel of your personal darshan. And then he offered wonderful prayers. So we've read that before, and then he comes back. There's a whole chapter entitled "The Return of Dhruva to the Kingdom." His father was crestfallen. He was this a 6 months period actually. He was gone, and eventually he took over the kingdom, and he ruled for 36,000 years. We're in the Satya Yuga here, and the most prominent thing that happened there that is related in the Bhagavatam is that his brother, Uttama, I think his name was killed by some yakshas when he was out hunting. And Uttama's mother, Suruchi, she also died. Was it involved with that? I think she went to look for him or something. Yeah, forest fire. So Dhruva was incensed, that his brother was killed, and he went to punish the yakshas, and he started killing all of them. And it was a little bit over the top, and so Kuvera came down. Kuvera is the lord of the yakshas, and appealed to him that stop and to And then what happened? He put his, they had the yakshas in this battle. They called forth, and this happens quite often in the Bhagavatam. Usually when they're losing, they call forth these illusions, like mountains throwing down thunderbolts and dropping all kinds of horrible things on Dhruva. But it's all this big illusion. But it's meant to, it's like psychological warfare. But just when he was thinking of the holy name and put the arrow on his bow, the illusions were dissipated just by his thinking of the holy name, not even chanting loudly. So there's all kinds of lessons here. But he dutifully, he stopped slaughtering all the yakshas, and he ran the kingdom very nicely, like a pure devotee king, Vajarshi. And now is time when he's going to go back to Godhead. He's leaving the body, and it's very dramatic. And I won't, give away the plot, but something very dramatic happens when he actually leaves his body. So here the idea is that he's reaping the rewards of his efforts in devotional service. And it's defined here, as Prabhupada says, by understanding the pastimes, whether within this material world or the spiritual world, factually. Now this word is there in the verse, tatvataha, which is important, because Krishna's pastimes are well known in India, just like Ram's pastimes are well known. But just to know the plot is not really what it's talking about here. That's very good, but it's not in complete truth. One has to understand, first of all, that Krishna does not appear like we do in this world. And the main difference that Prabhupada emphasizes, he does so by his own sweet will, and we're forced to do so. We're just reading chapter 4 in the beginning of it, so it's dealing with the appearance of the Lord. And he has this verse, he says, Ajopi-san, abhyatma, bhutanam isharopi-san, prakatim svam adhisthaya sambhavam yatmamaya. So, although I am unborn, it's paradox. Although I am born, I take birth. And my transcendental body does not deteriorate, of the Atma. I still appear, periodically, he will explain in a couple of verses, by my own transcendental energy. In other words, Krishna appears by his own will. We're forced to appear, according to our karma. And because we actually change our body, Krishna doesn't really change his body. It's always the same spiritual form, even though he may come in different aspects. It's still transcendental, Satchidananda body. He doesn't forget. He just explained at the beginning of the chapter how he spoke the same Bhagavad Gita, the gist of it, to the sun god millions and millions of years ago. Way back. And it's come down to the Manu, Vaivasata Manu, then the Ikshvaku, the human society. And then down. But because of time, it's the nature of time to degrade everything. And so because of the passage of time, the science as it is has become lost. And so Krishna is speaking again to Arjuna because he's his friend and he's devotee. This is the gist of the first beginning of that chapter. And then he begins talking about his birth. Because Arjuna, he's covered by Krishna's will, and therefore he says, well, how can that be? We're contemporaries. We're friends. And you're talking about something you did millions and millions of years ago? That doesn't compute. So Krishna says, yes, you were there also, but you forgot. You were there in a different capacity. He's an eternal friend of Krishna, especially in the material world. He keeps appearing with Krishna in the universes. But Arjuna was in a different body, different capacity. He totally forgot, just like we totally forgot. But we have faith that we have a previous life and lives, right? So all of that is forgotten, so we can play at being independent and being controllers. So this understanding of Krishna's birth, how and why he appears and when he appears, he explains that also in the 4th chapter. And his activities, he calls it karma, but of course it's called lila. Lila means, again, completely free. Not under any duress, not under any control by previous activities or anyone. It's all his own will. If we can understand that in truth, then we won't take birth again. We'll go back to Godhead. So Prabhupada is emphasizing that in this little purport. And how do we come to understand that? That's the process of bhakti, of devotional service. I always listen to Prabhupada lectures and around the house when I get up and so forth. So I again and again I'm listening to the Kunti prayers that's come around, and she has a series of verses saying that some say you appeared for this reason, because you were prayed to by Brahma. Some say in order to fulfill the desires of your parents, who are your eternal parents, life after life. And then comes this verse, Bhavesmin klishyamananam avidya kama karmabhi shravanasmadanahani karishanidikechana. And that's close to what he says in the Bhagavad Gita, is that in this world, people who are covered by ignorance, they're performing activities on the basis of material desire, kama. And so they're perfecting their activities, and it's binding them. And so they're suffering like anything. Bhavesmin klishyamananam avidya kama karmabhi. So in order to revive the process of hearing and chanting and remembering you appear. And this is also explained in the 10th canto, I believe, where it says, Anugrahaya bhaktanam manusam dayamastataha bhajate tadrishikritari ashushat tatparo bhavet. That he comes for many reasons. This is one of the reasons, to help people in general who are suffering from demons who have taken over the earth. That's mentioned there in the beginning of the 10th canto. And as well to protect the devotees and to enliven them by enacting his pastimes, so that when they have subject matter for hearing, because you can imagine, he comes once every 8 billion 400 million years or something, once in a day of Brahma, 24 hours. Day and night. So, after some time, the pastimes are forgotten, or not, they need to be revived. So this is one of the reasons he comes, out of his compassion for the devotees, to give them the fresh, pastimes he can act, and then it'll be told about in books like srimadbhagavatam, so that the details of his leela will be refreshed. So, that's how we can understand. We can't understand the pastimes of Krishna by simply understanding the basic facts and then speculating about it. It has to be done through the process of bhakti, the essential element of which is surrender to preceptor and to hear, the hearing process, and Prabhupada called the ardent hearing or submissive all reception, and service. That service attitude and that actual performance of service purifies the heart, so that we can understand, not just with our brain and our intelligence, but with our whole being, because we're actually getting the mercy of Krishna. What does it say? Shinvatam sukata Krishna punya shavana kirtana ridyan naksto hibhadrani vidunoti suritsatam. Very important section of the first canto, second chapter. That when one develops an interest and a taste for hearing Krishna Katha, then one is sincere about it, then Krishna within the heart, he purifies one of what is called abhadras, which is very close to an anarthas. Abhadras are all of this misconceptions, material desires, fears, doubts. All of that are inauspicious things within the heart that keep us bound to this world. So he cleanses that away. Literally, the word is cleansed. Vidunoti surit satam. He is the surit, the best well-wishing friend. He's the best well-wishing friend of everyone. But especially his devotees, they can appreciate that, how he's their friend. And the way he does it, he expresses that, is by giving us a taste for hearing and guiding us in devotional service, sending us devotees, especially pure devotees, who can guide us. And within the heart, he's purifying. Then it describes how nashta prayeshu badreshu. Then when these abhadras, or impurities in the heart, are almost all gone. Nashta prayeshu means almost destroyed. But there's still some residue, you're not completely pure. But by the process of nityam bhagavata sevaya, which is regular hearing of Bhagavatam. Prabhupada was adamant that the classes go on regularly in the morning and also evening, especially morning, and that devotees attend because this is this Nityam Bhagavata Sevya. And the other Bhagavat, the person Bhagavat, the service to the Bhagavat, to the pure devotee. Those two services purify the heart. Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, Bhagavad Yuttamasya Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. Then one's devotion to Krishna becomes fixed. Nishta. There's a period, it's exactly correspondent to Rupa Goswami's ladder. He gave this wonderful couple of verses which we should really study. Everyone can understand at least the first part of it. That you come in, how does one progress in devotional service? It's a process. It's a process of purification. The first thing is there has to be some preliminary faith. You call Adav Shraddha. Now Prabhupada described this faith as respect or interest, enough to bring you into the association of devotees. Now, especially with all the media we have now, there's not only books, but there's internet and everything. That respect and that interest can be expressed even if you're remote from a temple. I mean, you can be out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's stories like in Russia, where books went out. It's a far-flung country. It's at least twice as big as the United States physically, and with a little more than half the population. So there's a lot of scattered towns in Siberia and everything. Anyway, the books are going out, and somebody gets a book and is in some remote town where no devotees had visited yet, but the book was there. And a sincere person is reading about chanting Hare Krishna, and somehow he gets some beads. He must have had some contact with them. But he's alone. And he starts, a bhakti chakra, to come together. And when devotees finally visited there, they found a flourishing center. People were reading Bhagavad Gita, in Russian, and they were chanting Hare Krishna. So the point is that was a progress here. The association came, the key association, through Prabhupada's books. You're actually associating with a pure devotee when you read these purports and the translation. But it all depends on how you receive them. It's your attitude. Are you reading, with great interest and receptivity, and which is proved by your taking up some of the instructions, giving up this and taking on this, chanting, and also searching for association. So with all of that, so he describes Sutta Goswami right at the beginning of Bhagavatam, 2nd chapter. And I often think there's a whole lesson here. That's a complete lesson. We made it into a book, this book called Dharma. It's right out here. Dharma, the Way of Transcendence. Prabhupada's verses, the translations, with all synonyms and everything, transliteration, and his purport, and then we appended various sections of lectures that he gave on these verses. He spoke on these verses often, so there was quite a lot of raw material to work with. So what happens next? So you're purified, and you're fixed in devotion. Now this corresponds to in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu with Rupa Goswami's. So you come into the association of devotees. You're interested. You get your books, and you want to start practicing. Just like anything. It's not difficult. Here's the beads. Chant 2 rounds a day before you go to work, or everything. Read some Bhagavad Gita. Here's how you make your altar with these pictures. You can offer your food if you're vegetarian. There's at the end of these small books, a lot of them, there's a nice section called Krishna Consciousness at Home. It's a wonderful essay written by Mahatma Prabhu, who used to be an integral part of this temple back in the 80s. He and Dharma Sedu were here, Gunagrai Maharaj were here, and a lot of devotees who were coming, old-timers, they were made here at that time. And so he wrote this wonderful essay, how you can take what you just read in the book and apply it at home. Here's the pictures you can get, and you can get them from the BBT, and here's the little mantras you can do, and it will sell you some incense, and give a whole practical way of practicing at home. So that's a step up. Now, when you start practicing regularly, seriously, the cleansing process continues. It's called anartha vritti. And that anartha vritti, or the abhadras, anarthas are practically the same. When you get to a certain stage where they're almost done, you come to the point of nishta. That's exactly correspondent to bhakti naishtaki. We chant it every morning when I give class. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll tell you a little story. This is a little editing pastimes. because they're going on all the time. So back in 1976, this was during Prabhupada's time, Jayawada Das Brahmachari, who was at that point the main editor for the Srimad Bhagavatam, he went through the first canto, especially the first couple of chapters, and he was focusing on the translations, and he was comparing it to the book that Prabhupada brought with him. You know, the Prabhupada brought the first canto with him. He printed it in India. So those are called the Delhi Bhagavatams. So he's looking at what we have, which was edited by Dravida Prabhu. This was his first big editing job. And he's looking at what Prabhupada wrote and what we have. And so this particular verse, the whole part about attending classes in Bhagavatam, that had been changed to just regularly studying the Bhagavatam. You see? So I said, well, wait a minute. Prabhupada's emphasizing the need of a class to really, hear it together and in association. So he put that back in there by regular attendance in class in Srimad Bhagavatam. So when that book came out in mid-'76, it was distributed mostly in America. And some devotees said, look at this. The authorities, have engaged Jayawada Das Brahmachari in trying to get us to go to the Bhagavatam class by putting this, changing Prabhupada's translation. We have it here. We've had it for 4 years. The book first came out in '72. This is not right. So when they saw Jayawada, they complained, So wait a minute. Here's the original Delhi Bhagavatam. What did Prabhupada write? Oh, I see. Prabhupada said, by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam. It's right there, you'll find. So that's important. So it goes on. And what's the result? Tadada dastamo bhava kamala. So when you come to the point of nishta, your bhakti is fixed, then you're fixed in the mode of goodness, and even starting to flirt with the mode of pure goodness. And you're free of the concomitants of the lower modes. Rajas and tamas is gone, and lust and greed and all of these things that are part of the abhadras, you don't feel them anymore. You've changed. Your heart has changed, just like Dhruva Maharaj's heart has changed. Everyone goes through that if you're serious, the change of heart. It's even a chapter in Bhagavatam, second canto. So it goes on. Now, if you keep the purification process going, at evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. This is a very more advancement. This vigyan is an important concept. There's gyan and there's vigyan. Gyan is what we read in the book, which is great. We have to have that. It's knowledge. But we can say that I haven't really realized it. I know that I'm a spirit soul, but I haven't realized it the way that I can realize if I put my hand in a fire and it's hot. In other words, it's something that I understand theoretically. It makes perfect sense, but to really see myself as a spirit and see everyone else as a spirit and see the spirit soul and the super soul in everyone's heart, that's not there. So here he's saying that as you go on, you bhagavat tattva vijnanam, the truth of bhakti becomes realized as much as you realize anything, in your ordinary life. It's probably scientific knowledge, direct perception. And one of the concomitant, prasanna manaso, your natural happiness and peace and clarity is experienced. That this is something we should remember, that our natural state is Satchidananda. We're full of bliss, just like Krishna. He's Anandamayo Vyasat. This is one of the sutras in the Vedanta Sutra. Which means that by his activities and everything we know about Krishna, we can see he's made of Ananda. Anandamaya, full of bliss all the time. Why would God be anything else? If he's all powerful, he's going to always be full of bliss. So he's full of bliss. We're part and parcel of him. We belong to that nature. We're also meant to be full of bliss all the time. But I think we can probably say that that's not true right now. That sometimes we're not so blissful, and on the material plane, certainly not. So here it's saying prasanna manaso. This is the first hint of that. You're naturally joyful. Prasanna has two main meanings: very joyful and very clear-minded. Your consciousness is clear. You look it up in the dictionary. Bhagavat tattva mukta sangasya, and you're liberated. Means that you have no desire, just like Dhruva, absolutely no desire for the kingdom, for anything material. That's gone, And then the last verse, which is also has been slightly revised. Here he's giving the culmination. Bidjita hridaya grantish. That all the knots in the heart, your attachments, are totally cut. There's no more desire for the material world. Chidyante sarva sankshaya, you have no doubts. This is Vigyan. You're as sure of Krishna and your relationship with Krishna and the reality. It's true. It's absolutely true. No one can shake your faith. Then chiyante chasti karmani drishta evatmani shure. And then all of your karma is gone. You're not bound to this world. You're going back to Godhead. There's no latent karma, either good or bad, like that. And drishta evatmani shure. Now, if you look in the book, it says one sees the self as master. And the Buddha went, really? Because there's a small s self there. There's been this convention for forever that cap as self refers to the super soul, and small as self refers to the individual soul. There's an important distinction there. So this is the small as self, and he said, isn't that a mistake? It should be cap as self. And that's actually what the solution we went to in the Dharma book. But when I studied this and I looked at the purport, and I looked at at how Prabhupada translated words, I got into it. What he's saying there, because what he originally had, one's karma is completely eradicated with the seeing of one's self, the dominating factor. That was the translation for Ishvara. Now Ishvara means the controller, and he used that phrase there. Now in the purport at the end, the last paragraph, he says, one sees one's master. Master, the Lord. One sees the Lord in the heart. But at the beginning of the purport, he says, getting scientific knowledge of the Lord means seeing oneself as well. In other words, one sees oneself and one sees the Lord. One sees oneself in one's actual form, spiritual form. This is the culmination of the process of bhakti, to understand who we really are in relation to the Lord, and to have complete understanding who Krishna is, as complete as you can be. So that's what the translation is. When all the karma is eradicated, one sees oneself and one's master. That's exactly what Prabhupada meant. And what fell out there, you have to remember how these books were printed, is ancient physical printing press with leading, with little lead things coming down as soon as you type something big. I've seen these things. They're ancient. They were current in the 60s in India, and they may still be current. But words fell out. Words weren't there. And one of the word that fell out was "and." One sees oneself, the dominating factor. And so the question, well, maybe there's a comma missing. But am I the dominating factor? Are you this individual soul? So that's what is meant there. So Dhruva is having his own, relative. Yeah, well, what Prabhupada had, what he has in the Delhi Bhagavatam, he had, all one's karma is eradicated with one seeing oneself, the dominating factor. Seeing oneself, but if you just read the purport, yeah, but that exactly. Right, and it basically shows an and, or it shows a comma. But he didn't he put in the word as, but that's equivalent to the comma, because it means that the self is the dominating factor, or the master. One sees, but he took out one's, because that didn't make sense. One self can be only the soul. So he made that into the self, which makes it kind of ambiguous. No, I agree with that. Yeah, one sees oneself, Prabhupada had. And that can only mean the individual soul. One sees oneself. He never used that to mean one sees the supreme self. And Prabhupada had lower S self, S there. So there's the individual soul, and there's the super soul, who Prabhupada later mentions the master. That's And so one sees oneself and one's master. QED. Anyway, so Dhruva, he saw his master. Vishnu came down back when when he was a child, and now he's being taken back to the spiritual world to engage in eternal pastimes with the Lord. Vishnu. And so this is very dramatic. And Anyone who understands factually who the Lord is, how he appears, how he acts, can be immediately fit for transfer. This principle stated in the Bhagavatam operated in the case of Dhruva. Throughout his life, he tried to understand the Supreme Lord by austerity and penances. Now the mature result was that Dhruva became fit to be carried to the spiritual world, accompanied by the confidential associates of the Lord. So this is really what the culmination of Bhakti Yoga is meant to be, is that more or less this kind of scenario we're striving for. That when we leave the body, that we don't come back to a physical body, but as probably we go back to Godhead. Now there's another kind of wrinkle on this, sometimes probably to point out that in the case, especially of Krishna Lila, Krishna is always engaging in those pastimes somewhere in the material world. Right now, it's really remarkable. Right now, he's taking births in some universe. And right now, he's killing Putana in another universe, a little later. It's just like the sun rising. Somewhere, the sun rose an hour and a half ago, or whatever it was. So somewhere, the sun's rising right now, right? Now, of course, we break it up into these time zones. But the point is, the sun is peeking over the horizon continuously, right? Because it's going on. So similarly, Krishna's, all of his Leela are going on in some universe. So when you leave, you've already got some understanding of who you are, but you need some training. So you take birth as a contemporary of Krishna in the universe where he's actually appearing, especially, if you're Hare Krishna devotee, aiming for Krishna Lila in Vrindavan. And then you take birth in your Swarup, Siddha Swarup, your specific role that you have, your eternal pastimes with Krishna, attitude, mood. And then you get trained up in perfection. And then when Krishna, takes everyone back to the spiritual world, from that universe you go with him, and you're in Goloka Vrindavan. But really, where Krishna is, there the spiritual world is. So you go back to Godhead means that you go back to Krishna. You're with Krishna from then on. So this is the goal of the bhaktas. It's completely, people have no idea. There's all of these goals that people have in this world. And Prahlad Maharaj perfectly characterizes them. If one does not know, nate vadu svartakatim hi Vishnu, that Vishnu or Krishna is the real goal of the soul, called your sva-artha. They have no idea. So they have to have some goals. Durashayaye bahir artha manava. This word artha is very important, something you strive for, something you think of as of value. It can be something tangible or it can be a position, whatever. But it's durashaya, those hopes for happiness through these external means are always going to be frustrated. Bahirata manina. But unfortunately, from the day you're born, you're being inculcated with this idea, you are the body and all of these material goals. These are, and so those who are blind to the truth, they're teaching you, and you become blind as well, and so it's the blind lead the blind. And everybody stays tightly wrapped up and tightly bound up by the modes of nature, the strong ropes. And so we're back to the principle of how to become enlightened, or at least get the chance to practice this, and that is the association of pure devotee. So the last verse, he's preaching to his father. It's so dramatic. Here's this fragile little 5-year-old boy who is preaching, the original truth to power. Big monstrous demon who's performed severe austerities himself, not for realizing Krishna, but for becoming immortal. He's got a body made of stone. He's dominated the whole universe. All the demigods are bowing down to him, except for Vishnu and Shiva and Brahma. Even Narada is offering, he's so powerful, frightening. And Prahlad, he's not frightened. He's completely protected by Krishna. And he's saying, don't worry, Father, the first verse, you'll never become Krishna conscious. Mati na Krishna paratak svatova mito vipadye grihavatana. Those who have taken a firm vow, basically, and committed to materialistic household life, material life, they can't place their mind on Krishna. Mati na Krishna paratak svatova. Either by their own efforts or if they get some association, it just doesn't take. Because, what is it? Danta gobi vishatamta misram. Because the senses are out of control, they're entering more and more into darkness, And again, this phrase is so illuminating. Punak punas charvita charvananam. Again and again, chewing the chewed. In other words, our own lifetimes, we've experienced all of these things. You know, the different varieties of sex and different varieties of food and a million different other varieties of sense pleasure. And we never become satisfied, and we keep chewing it and different. In the modern day, with everybody stuck to a screen somehow, you know, it's viewing the viewed. Came up with that, my little joke, but it's true. Somehow or other, you know, there's something interesting, I'm going to get more. So that's the nature. And they, Nate Badusvartika, they have no understanding that Vishnu is the goal of life, and so they say, so what's the solution? He gives it in the 3rd chapter. Of course, Hiranyakashipu is not very happy to hear it, but this is what he says. Naisham matistava dudu kramanging spashityanata pagamo hirata mahiyasam padarajobhishekam nishkinchananam navanita yavat. He says, until and unless one bathes himself in the foot dust of a pure devotee, in other words, really surrenders and listens, one cannot get the great value, the great artha of anarthas, getting rid of one as an artist. You cannot touch, you cannot with your mind, you cannot think of or certainly meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord. Naisham matis, mind, tavat uru kramangi. There's this tavat yavat pair in Sanskrit, which is often used. Usually it says, as long as you don't do this, you won't get that. And here it says, as long as you don't surrender to a pure devotee, you won't be able to fix your mind on Krishna, and you won't get the benefit of getting free from your anarthas, and that will cause you suffering birth after birth. That's what he tells. His father went ballistic. You know, you want me to surrender to Vishnu? You know, forget it. So I think that's where he said, I'm going to kill you myself. I think he's at that point. Anyway, it's very dramatic. And of course, Nrsingadev came and protected his dear devotee. And then the prayers, that's a whole other chapter. Where, Prahlad is giving us so much instruction in the prayers. So this is very dramatic here with Dhruva. And in a few verses, we'll see what happens when death actually comes. Doesn't freak him out at all. He has the perfect answer. I'll leave you in suspense for those who haven't remembered. Okay, any questions, comments about any of these things? Okay. Yes, Bhakti Ace.
Hare Krishna. I have 2 questions. Are we always continuously experiencing the reactions to our karma, such as disease or freak accidents? And what are anarthas?
What are anarthas? Okay. So, maybe I should repeat it. She was so soft-spoken. Are we continuously experiencing the results of our karma? And what are anarthas? Well, for ordinary materialists who have no even tinge of devotional service, they're tightly bound by the karma. The karmas and it's an extremely complicated web. Some of the results are coming from previous lives. Some of the results are coming from this life. I mean, it's not a mystery. You know, if you completely blow it out, you just become a drug addict. That's your own decision. And then you're going to suffer for it. That's like an immediate, instant karma. But karma goes over lifetimes. You know, if you were very kind to someone in your past life, and who that person was, if that person happened to be a saintly person, well, that's, tremendous credit. So you'll get a good result in this lifetime. But karma really means a material reaction, good and so-called good and so-called bad reaction. And so yes, we're constantly experiencing that. And this is one of the things devotees can see, that there's no accidents. Now there may be, quote, an accident on the Grand Avenue or on the I-5 or whatever, and someone may have gotten killed or severely injured or whatever. And say, the devotees, and this is karma coming due for both people. Say there's a 2-car crash, one person gets killed, one person gets injured. So this is a result of you can't say what it is, but this is how this world is working, moving around. There's higher forces that are doing it. The demigods are fulfilling our karma in various ways. Now, when you begin devotional service, there's a change in how this is working. Because Krishna begins to take a direct interest. And so oftentimes devotees will say, yeah, I mean, this happened to me. I tried, to do both. I was practicing devotional service, chanting not 16 rounds, but I was following the principles, and reading, and I would visit the temple on Sundays and things like that, and got more and more interested. But I was also finding that it was difficult to advance because I was all on my own, So I prayed, because this is not exactly karma, but I was praying to a big picture of Super Soul that I had. I would chant my rounds. I said, please move me on to the next stage. I'm at a blockage here. So I don't know, it was a couple of days at most that this ad appeared. I was working in a hospital for a different job at a much closer hospital for the night shift. So I said, this is perfect. I'd work the night shift and then get maybe 4 or 5 hours sleep. Then I'll have the whole day. I can go into the city. I lived on Long Island. I can go to the yoga studio and do that. And, maybe I'll visit the temple. I thought I'd have much more time for bhakti, for my spiritual practices. So I quit my old job, got a good reference. I would work there a year or more. And I started to train up for the new hospital, much smaller hospital, and I'm going around with learning the ropes. It was just, maybe 10 patients I had to worry about. And then after a week of that, I was on my own. And so, the night shift, And I've been practicing bhakti and a lot of yoga and raw foods, so I was kind of sensitized. And in hospitals, there's a lot of ghosts. People die there all the time, there's these spirits and everything. And I said, this is, and there was hardly anything to do because all the patients are sleeping. So after a few days of that, I said, I can't do this. So I realized, so then I quit. So then I didn't have a job. I'd already donated all my money, I said, well, I might as well join the temple. And that's how I joined the temple. I had all these attachments, but the job was gone, and my little props were all taken away. So later on I said, oh, this is how the Super Soul arranged it, So the devotees see, whatever bad happens to them, devotees see, oh, this is Krishna. He's breaking my material attachments. It's all due to something I did in my past life. There's an important verse, Tatte nukampam susamikshimano bundana eva atmakritam. Atmakritam means I did it. You see something, some suffering comes, it says, oh, this is actually Krishna's mercy. You see, he's giving me much less than I was due, and he's showing me how there's no safety and pleasant in this material world. I really have to take more shelter. Now, if something good happens, and we find that, we come into some money or whatever, oh, this is great. I have a greater opportunity for serving Krishna. Krishna is so kind. So on both sides, you see it's Krishna's mercy. And in this way, the devotees don't feel the suffering the way ordinary people do. So this is how we should see. If you're seriously chanting, then it's not ordinary karma that's going on. Krishna's trying to teach us. Oftentimes he's teaching us with, you can't really be happy without Krishna. Don't try. The proverb sometimes say you can't have your foot in two boats. If you're going to be serious about Krishna consciousness, you have to reconcile yourself. Well, my material life is going to be de-emphasized. It doesn't mean you have to all of a sudden take sannyas or anything like that. But it means that your aspirations, for success should really be directed toward Krishna consciousness. And whatever you have to do materially to maintain, that's okay. But, at a certain point, it may come to the point where you say, well, I want to do this full time and make really faster advancement. And that's what we did back in the day. Is that more or less answer it? Was there another? Oh, what anartas simply means things that you don't want. Anartas are things that you do. They be in the heart. And, anartas are generally, lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, and weakness of heart, the idea that, you don't have enough determination to really progress in devotional service. This is another anarta. It's all the things that are impediments in our devotional service, and we want to get rid of them or diminish and clear them away. And Krishna helps. If you're serious about chanting and practicing devotional service, you'll find that they dissipate, and that's the best way. Anyone else? I'm sorry I went way over. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.